Where is Sonia? I'm going to embarrass her. There's Sonia. Sonia, who just stood up in the back corner, I've never met in person. And Sonia worked with me on editing my book 5 years ago, and we literally bumped into each other at the back door. So I had to call it and say thank you, because if it wasn't for you, this book never would have come. I'm one of you. I'm just one of the crazy people who kind of was trying to figure out life and get through my path and figuring out the shortcuts of running businesses. And that's kind of how I got through school, was figuring out the shortcuts of school. So like a lot of you, I didn't do well in school. I kind of had to find a different path. And that's really how I've built businesses ever since, is finding a different path. And I'm going to share those ideas with you today. I'd like you to try to keep your mind open today that maybe I'm right. Maybe these ideas from 1-800-GOT-JUNK or from College Pro Painters or Gerber Auto Collision, maybe they will work for you. And the reason I know that they'll work for you is I coach and mentor CEOs all over the world on putting these ideas in place. So these are going to be some ideas related to culture that we're going to talk about today. I gave you a copy of my book, Double Double, and I don't want you to read it, which is a little bit odd. I don't want you to read it cover to cover. This is not a novel. It's not 50 Shades of Grey. You don't have to read it from front to back. What I want you to do is read 5 core chapters from the book. I'd like you to read chapters 1, 2, 4, 6, and 12. Those are really the core chapters that you should all focus on. And then any of the other chapters that kind of grab your interest or maybe are something you might be focusing on over the next quarter, then read those chapters as you need. But don't read a business book from front to back. It's not supposed to be done that way. I'd also like to thank Tucker Max and his team, Book in a Box. They actually are sponsoring my book tour and helping me get copies of Double Double out around the world. So thank you to Tucker Max and his team for giving you guys all copies of that book today. I want to dive into the content today and talk a little bit about culture. Talk about how do we turn our companies into magnets for really great talent. If you think of these two companies, Google and Microsoft, which company do you think of as being a great company to work for? Who said Microsoft? Right? That's laughable, right? Isn't that scary, though? I hope Microsoft isn't sponsoring the conference, but isn't that kind of laughable that you think about two companies that are almost identical? They both have billions of dollars in cash. They both are on the left coast of the United States. They both hire the same kinds of technical people. They're both really very similar, but Google decided that culture was a strategic choice, and Microsoft really never had the discussion. I've been to both of their head offices, and going to Microsoft is like walking into a morgue. And when you go to Google, you really don't want to leave. So think about your business and what you're building and ask yourself, do you want to be the Google or the Microsoft? And how do you get your entire team to embrace that cultural shift in your organization? So I'm going to give you some tools and strategies to put in place. And these are easy to put in place tools and strategies into your company. So I'm not going to overcomplicate things. So the number one thing that we learned in building all of our companies, we learned back in 1998. I was invited to go to a lunch. There were 120 CEOs in Vancouver, Canada, who were invited to this lunch, and only 16 of us showed up. And about the 1 minute mark into the lunch, the 16 of us thought we should probably leave, because he was talking about this idea of looking into a crystal ball. And he said, if you could look into a crystal ball and see what was coming in the future, you could build it. And we're like, oh shit, what's going on? Like looking into a crystal ball, like we're business people, right? But what he was talking about was how high performance athletes, how sports athletes would literally visualize themselves performing the event. And he said, if you could actually get into the same space that an athlete would be in and see your company 3 years in the future, and if you could focus on visualizing your company 3 years in the future, and you kept focusing on those visions, you'd be able to start communicating those visions to your employees, and they could make those visions come true. So he gave us all these analogies. He talked about Brooke Shields. When she was getting married to Andre Agassi, Brooke didn't like her legs. So she put a picture of what she wanted her legs to look like on the refrigerator. On her wedding day, she was going to try to move towards having the perfect legs. Well, we know that the marriage between Brooke Shields and Andre Agassi didn't work out. He ended up getting married to Steffi Graf. The crazy thing was, those were Steffi Graf's legs on the refrigerator. So the process of visualization did work. Unfortunately, it worked really well for Steffi and for Andre, not so well for Brooke. So the number one thing you have to take from today's lesson is go back to your homes and take down the pictures on your refrigerator that might be motivating the wrong part of your relationship. So that didn't help us either. We started to see visualization, but we really didn't know how to bring it into the business world until we found a company and an industry that uses visualization all the time, and it was home builders. You think about doing a renovation or building a home, the CEO of that job is really the homeowner. Right? If you've done a renovation or built a house, the homeowner is the one who is in charge of what the finished product is going to look like. And we don't necessarily know how to build it, but we know what we want it to look like at the end. So we explain our vision by showing pictures and drawings and diagrams and photos out of magazines and pictures from our friends' houses that we took when they weren't looking. And we hand all these to the contractor and we say, build me this. Within this budget, within this timeline, build me this vision. And the contractor then goes away and draws blueprints to make your visions come true, and then he hands the blueprints to the workers, and the workers can recreate your dream. That's where the concept started to make sense to us, is if we as the entrepreneur can lean out into the future and describe what we see, then our employees, our key team, can figure out how to make it happen, and then they can execute that plan. But we often don't share in enough detail. See, business schools lied to us. Business schools were actually run by people who had never run companies, so they told us to do a mission statement or a vision statement, right? Get all your employees, put them into a boardroom, or go on a retreat somewhere, put all your favorite words up on a whiteboard, vote on all those favorite words, eliminate all the words that get no votes, right? We've all done it. Take the 7 words that are left over, mash them up into one sentence, and that's your vision statement. Go team. Who has one of those? Right? Yeah, don't do it. It doesn't do anything. Everybody walks out of the room and goes, it's bullshit. It doesn't work. So why would we do something that doesn't work? Well, it's because it's the only thing we've ever been taught. So I'm going to give you a system and a tool that does work, but the vivid vision is a much broader description of what you see. It's about a 3 or 4 page written description of what your company looks like in the future. So I want you to think about leaning out 3 years into the future and what you might see. Who here has seen the movie The Sound of Music? Right? Good movie. Who's never seen the movie? Okay, who has no idea what the movie The Sound of Music's about? No idea? Some? No idea? Okay, who's got no idea? No idea what the movie The Sound of Music's about? Okay, I'm going to go with you. What's your name?
Oliver.
Oliver. Can I make fun of you?
Sure.
You get to make fun of me too. So I need you're my chief operating officer. I need to have a picnic that's just like the one in the movie The Sound of Music. And I want you to organize it so it looks and feels just like the one in The Sound of Music. Now, you don't really have any idea what it looks like. So I'll give you a head start. Now, don't say anything. Should the picnic be at the ocean or in the mountains or at a park? Okay, at a park. Good. And Oliver, where do we get the food? Should we get it at a grocery store or buy it at a hut or bring it in baskets? Baskets, okay. And we're going to bring kids. We're going to bring like our customers' kids and our employees' kids will come to the picnic. Should they be dancing, playing croquet, or playing baseball? Dancing. Okay, well, at least you got the clue of The Sound of Music, but you really screwed up the picnic. I wanted it to look just like The Sound of Music, and it was up in the Swiss Alps. It's up in the mountains. Like, you messed this thing up by having it at a park. See, I actually had somebody one time, they said, have it at a lake, and the kids are playing croquet, and they buy the food at Safeway. I mean, that's a disaster if this was my vision. See, the problem isn't that CEOs have such great intuition. The problem is we don't share what the movie looks like with everyone. But if everyone could see the same movie, then everyone would have the same intuition that the CEO has. We don't share in enough detail what our future looks and feels like, so people are at best trying to read our minds. So you need to share it with them in more detail. Now, if you're writing a vivid vision, you've got to get out of the box. You have to get away from your office, leave your laptops, leave your iPads, grab a physical notepad and a pen, and go sit somewhere in nature. Go sit somewhere where you're inspired that will actually let the ideas come out. Go to a park, go to the mountains, go to the lake, sit somewhere and just write. What I like doing is doing a kind of leaning out into the future exercise to pretend I'm sitting in the future. I've had CEOs literally smoke a joint and sit out in a park for 4 hours and just let their mind drift 4 years out or 3 years out into the future to describe what they see. And then do a mind map. Describe every functional area of your org chart 3 years in the future. Describe operations and what it looks like, what it feels like, how it's behaving. Describe marketing. Describe operations. Describe IT, finance, engineering. Describe every area of your org chart as if you're standing 3 years in the future. And then talk about what your customers are saying about you, what your employees are saying about you. Describe what the media is writing about you 3 years in the future. And when you can describe it in that vivid detail, not explaining how it happened, but getting enough bullet points, then you can actually write it up and organize all your points into some rough paragraphs. And then you can pull it together into a written document. Back in 2007, I taught a guy at a program that's held at MIT every year called the Entrepreneurial Masters Program. It's held on site at MIT, and it's a program run by the Entrepreneurs Organization. I was teaching 65 CEOs from around the world this concept. And Sebastian Tondeur ran a conference planning meeting company based in Geneva that at the time was doing 100 million in revenue and was making about 10 million in profit. But he leaned out 3 years and said at 2009 he would do 500 million in revenue. And he described his company doing 500 million in revenue. 3 years later, he was doing 504 million in revenue with $120 million EBITDA. In 3 years, imagine going from 100 revenue to 100 in profit. But it's because he completely aligned his team around the world with this vision. Then he rolled out the 2015 Vivid Vision to do $1 billion in revenue. And it gets pretty detailed describing what his company looked like. I got an email from him about a year ago, and he was almost giddy in his email because his biggest competitor in the world has just gone bankrupt, and he's now picking up the pieces of a $700 million company, and the $1 billion vision is virtually a fait accompli. So the area of alignment that you can pull towards is massive. I have a client that I coach right now who's going to be named in Fortune magazine in October as one of the top 5 companies in North America to work for. And it's because of this area of alignment. The survey results came back from Fortune, and they said it's the highest rating they've ever had in their history of any company because of this one area of alignment. So this concept works. We all know the vision statements don't work. Once you get your rough draft written, all these bullet points organized, give it to a writer. Give it to a marketing person who can really make it pop off the page. They won't change what you say in the essence, but they'll make it actually inspiring. And then give it to someone who can make the graphic design elements of your brand come together as well. This is a client that I mentored in Ottawa called Gong Show Gear. They make clothing for guys or people that like to watch hockey. Well, if you read through their vivid vision describing their company, it sounds like you're hanging out in a bar watching the game and just chatting with the boys over a couple pints. So when your brand is being communicated, make sure that that essence of your brand comes through as well. Now, when you're writing the vivid vision and you've got all these ideas being pulled together, it has to be like a magnet. It has to compel people toward your brand. But if a magnet attracts, what else does it do? Right? It repels. So you have to write your vivid vision in a way that it actually pushes some people away from you. It's interesting. When I met Tim Ferriss the first time about 9 years ago, Tim and I are really close friends. He's been to my home. I took him to Burning Man for his first time about 7 years ago. I really didn't like Tim when I first met him. And I told him to his face when I met him that I thought he was a jerk. And we started laughing about it because I realized later that that was his intent of writing the 4-Hour Workweek, was to polarize the audience. He didn't want everyone to love it. He wanted a few people to think he was a complete jerk so they would argue with the people online and it would fuel. If you try to be loved by everyone, you're loved by no one. We saw this happen when Steve Jobs launched the iPhone, whenever it was, 8 years ago, 7 years ago. This iPhone comes out, and what was it missing? The camera, yeah. No, it was missing the keyboard, right? Like, who would ever use this thing? It didn't have a keyboard. And I remember seeing the first time in Austin and asking this guy to show it to me, and I started typing on it, and I was hooked, right, instantly. But until we actually touched it, we didn't really buy in. Only those kind of 5%, the lunatics, really were the ones who were the raving fans at the beginning. And now all of us, we kind of look at Blackberries and go, well, they're like disco, right? Disco used to be cool too. But you have to be willing to polarize your audience. You have to be willing to push some people away and attract some people towards you. And when you do that, that's where you get the complete alignment in your organization. And that's really what we're looking for, in addition to slides working with it. This isn't working, so I'm going to ditch that. Do that. You're looking for the alignment. You're looking to get all of your team and all of your people pulling together. And the only way to truly get that is to literally have everyone on that same page. So I'm going to show you a video of what it feels like to roll out a vivid vision for the first time. When you're communicating this to your employees, your shareholders, your spouse, your banker, your lawyer, your doctors, potential employees, because you're sharing it with the world, when you're communicating your vivid vision, it's going to feel pretty stupid for the first 3 to 6 months. Because you see the future, but they're still focused pretty closely on today. So I'm going to show you a video of a guy who's dancing. Can we get some sound on this? So this guy is dancing, and he's got an idea. His idea is he's going to dance until everybody dances. But the reality is it takes a while until people join in because they're just not quite sure what he's doing yet. So your role as the CEO or the leader of a business area is to communicate the vivid vision until people start to join you. Usually it's a marketing person joins in first. Right? Marketing people can see the future, they're a little more creative, they understand it, they'll join you, they'll dance. And you keep dancing, you keep communicating. But look around you and you'll start to see some people in your organization that are not bought into where you're going. These could be senior people, they could be suppliers, they could be customers. But you need to keep communicating your vivid vision. As Jim Collins said in Good to Great, you communicate it over and over again until people are making fun of you. And only when they're making fun of you have your ideas started to stick. A sales guy will join in second. Marketing guy will bail. You keep dancing. And again, it takes a long time to get to the night before you become this overnight success. So you have to keep communicating your vivid vision over and over and over again. Marketing guy comes back in. A couple operations people will join in. It's only when the finance group and the engineering people start to join in do you realize you're actually on track. Now this is when you start to step on the gas. You share it with the media. You're constantly communicating your vivid vision. I had Rich Kalgard, who's the publisher of Forbes magazine, the physical print edition, wrote about this concept of the vivid vision in January of this year. He just wrote about me again in the issue that came out today in talking about the vision concept and how different it is from vision statements. You keep pouring on the gas, you keep communicating it, you keep sharing it, and this is the point when you know something is happening. But you look around you and you'll see there's people that are not going to get up and dance. People that are not buying into your vision, you have to get them out of your company. As soon as you start finding the cultural cancers inside your organization, you have to get them out. Because those one bad apples do truly spoil the whole bunch. All of our grandmother's truisms are real. This goes on for about another 2 minutes until 45,000 people ended up dancing. Because one guy was going to dance until everybody danced. That's the commitment you need to have with your vivid vision, is to craft it in a way, get it written in a way that it pops off the page, add your design elements, and then share it with people constantly. The CEO's role is to be the chief energizing officer. I was interviewed by Fortune magazine in 2003, and they asked me, how do I motivate my employees? And I said, I don't motivate my employees. I show them where I'm going. I hire A players. I get rid of the C players, and then I let them go, let them run. You don't need to hold people accountable if you hire accountable people. You know, they asked Herb Kelleher from Southwest Airlines, how do you get all your employees to smile like this? You know what he said? We hire smiley people. It's easy, right? If you hire happy people, they're happy. You can't teach a grumpy person to be happy. How do you get all your people to be such team players? Hire people who've played on teams before? Right? How come all of your people are so fit? Because I don't hire people who smoke and watch reality TV. Right? It's simple stuff. So you have to decide what you're building, and culture is a choice. Culture is by design. It doesn't happen by accident. Google focused on core concepts. They focused on their BHAG. They focused on their core values. They focused on their core purpose, and they had a vision that was articulated in a way that people could actually get it. It's science. This is simple stuff. We really overcomplicate business. Business is not that difficult. By the way, if you text the word double to 38470, if you text the word double to that number, I'll send you out 3 samples of companies' vivid visions so that you can get a better idea as to what it looks like. So if you pull your phone out, text the word double to 38470. It'll ask for your email address, and then I'll be able to send them out to you. I'm not going to be over-marketing to you, so you're not going into a sales funnel or a drip campaign. I'm too old to figure that shit out. I've become my dad, right? It's like, I can build companies, but this stuff's killing me. So let me dive into the next section. They talk about vision, but really comes down to people. Jim Collins in Good to Great said you have to get the right people on the bus, the wrong people off the bus, and everybody in the right seats. So that was a great mantra, but how do we do that? This is the bus, by the way. This is the bus that he talked about with Ken Kesey on the roof with the merry pranksters driving around the United States in the early 60s tripping on acid. Their mantra at the time was you're either on the bus or off the bus. And what they meant was you're either part of this or you're not. You're either with us or you're not. You either get it or you don't. Well, in your organization, you only want people that are on the bus who know where you're going and are inspired by that and want to be a part of it. And then you need to identify early on to get the people off who don't buy into where you're going. We often don't work hard enough to get the wrong people out of our company. We often work really hard on recruiting and interviewing and selecting and bringing people in, but we often don't work hard enough to get the wrong people out. So I want to talk to you about getting the wrong people out of your company. I wrote an article years ago for the Kauffman Foundation about recruiting, and I talked about duck hunting. And I said if you were in a duck blind, like I used to have to go duck hunting with my grandfather, you could learn a lot about recruiting. I remember one day we were looking off in the distance 2 miles away, and these ducks were flying. I'm like, Grandpa, call them in. He goes, those are the wrong ducks. I'm like, I'm not even sure if they are ducks. They're so far away. He goes, no, they're too low to the water, and they're in the wrong formation. Their wings are flapping the wrong way. Those are fish ducks. You want ones that are coming over from this area, and they fly slightly differently. I'm like, how do you know that? He said, I'm very clear on what I'm looking for, and I can tell from a mile away. So when you're looking to hire employees, you need to decide what behavioral traits are that you're looking for, and you need to be able to identify them from a mile away. Anyone here heard of College Pro Painters? Okay, so I helped build that company. I was in the top 30 people at that organization globally. Every year we'd have to go out and recruit 800 franchisees. Any former franchisees here from College Pro Painters? Kyle, who I hired in 1993. Kyle Sexton is a proof of this concept. Somebody else put their hand up at the back. There was a franchisee with College Pro? No? So literally the only guy in the room. I hired Kyle in Salem, Oregon in 1993 based on the 5 core traits that we looked for. Leadership, attainment, tenacity, introspection, and interdependence. I don't know if you know that that's what you were interviewed on, but we looked for those 5 things. We weren't looking to see if he could paint a house. Someone had to be strong in leadership, attainment, which was goal orientation, tenacity, which was the dog-like work ethic to get over, under, around any obstacle put in one's path, introspection, and interdependence. We taught everyone in the organization those 5 traits. We taught them the definitions. They could repeat them verbatim. And then we gave them 5 questions to ask in the job interviews to really probe so that we could uncover what the person's skills were like on those 5 areas. Then we decided if they had the skills to actually do the job. But before we looked at skills, we looked for cultural traits. You've heard of Zappos, clearly, right? I had dinner about 6-7 years ago with Alfred Lin and Tony. Tony hadn't even announced that Jen was his girlfriend at the time. She was sitting beside him at the table, and we were kind of going, wait a second, something's going on between you two. But we were talking to them, 12 of us, talking at this mastermind dinner about recruiting and how they knew from a distance if they had the right people. Well, they would literally go to the airport and pick up potential employees and drive them into their office building. They'd drop them off at the front door, and they'd go in and be greeted by this amazing culture. And the shuttle driver, after the 25-minute drive, would drive around to the side and park the shuttle, and then walk in the side door at Zappos and sit down at his desk in HR. And he would debrief with the HR team, and he'd say George was a jerk. George was miserable, he was grumpy. Kyle was amazing. Kyle actually tried to calm George down, and Sonia was super fun, she was really brilliant, and they actually were the 2 to go forward with. The shuttle driver would then walk out to the lobby and walk up to George and say, sorry, George, we're not proceeding any further with the interview. We'll take you back to your hotel. We'll still cover your flight and hotel as we promised, but we're not going any further with our job interview. Kyle and Sonia, come on through. You're coming through to the next stage. See, the job interview at Zappos starts at the airport. They just don't tell you that. And by the time you get to the front door, they've made a decision, because they would not let a cultural cancer inside the organization because they don't want anyone to think they might hire someone like that. Building a strong company and this culture shift has to start before people are working with you. You have to think about what you're looking for in advance. And then the other thing you learn from the duck blind is you put decoys out to attract ducks into your blind. So what are the decoys that we have in our companies today? What do we have? Other employees, right? That's a huge one. Your other employees are going to A players hang out with A players. What else? Your website, right? Does your brand represent what you're going to look like? Your office space, does it feel like where you're going? Your dress code, is it a first date dress code? That's what we always call it, a first date. If you wouldn't wear it on a first date, don't wear it to work. What would Richard Branson do with your business? I was doing this presentation in the Bahamas about 6 months ago, and I was talking about what would Richard Branson do if he came into your company and looked around and saw it. And the next day, the CEO of a company that was in the room said, by the way, Richard Branson and the Prime Minister of the Bahamas came into my company today, and he loved what he saw. And he wasn't kidding, he had photos. What would you do? How would it feel? What would he change? And then think about that. Are you attracting people in? The other thing you learn about a duck blind is you have to use a shotgun to go after ducks. But when you're hunting A players, when you want good employees, you need a rifle. You need to know where they're working, you need to know where to get them, and you need to go poach them. And A players are not looking for jobs. The best employees have never looked for a job. They've always been poached. A players hang out with A players, but you need to know where they are, you need to know how to find them, and you need to go get them. I have some of the top recruiting firms that all my clients around the world use, and you've never heard of any of them. They're so under the radar, but they literally know how to go out and find the A talent. And the cultures that we build inside our organizations are so strong that when we bring them in for a coffee, we got them. So you need to make sure that you're creating that culture inside your organization as well. We use a group interview to find out if the people have the right cultural traits. We bring in 8 candidates at the same time, put them at the same table, and one person from our company interviews 8 candidates at the same time, looking just for cultural and leadership skills. You know, we ask a bunch of random questions. What do you do for fun? What's the biggest problem you've ever solved? What's the most stressful time in your life? If we were hiring 2 people, you plus somebody else, who else should we hire? And then the final question is, how much money do you need to make this year, and how much money would you like to make over the next 3 years? And people will actually drop down their salary expectations because they're competing with other people. And it's legal to ask that question in every state and province. So think about the group interview. In this group interview, we're still not looking to see if you have the skills to do the job. We're just looking to see if you're the right cultural fit to come in and work in our organization. In the old days, they used to say, hire for attitude, train for skill. That gets you about 7% growth a year. You need to hire for the cultural fit and proven skill set to get the real growth. Steve Jobs used to say that he would show the wooden prototype to people, and if he didn't see the twinkle in their eyes, he didn't bring them in to see if they had the skills. If they weren't excited about where they're going, he didn't care if they had the skills. So think about your organization. Part of what you're looking for in cultural fit is core values. What are the core values in your company? There should be maximum of 4 or 5 core values. They should be short phrases, not single words. And here's the test. You have to be willing to fire people who break your core values. If you're not willing to fire people who break them, they're not core values, they're merely an aspirational value. Organizations from the top down have to obsess about the core values, and they have to live by them. The best I've ever seen are still the ones from College Pro Painters. Deliver what you promise, respect the individual, pride in all you do. The best of the best at College Pro lived these core values before they showed up at the door for the first interview. There were only 3. They were very clear. They didn't need any other explanation. Remember, Enron had core values, right? But they didn't live them. They didn't care. So ask yourself, do you care enough to live that way, like Google does? Then we use the systems from Top Grading. By the way, my dad pulled me aside when I was 16. He said, you'll never be smart enough to figure this out on your own. He said, your R&D has to stand for rip off and duplicate. So take the best systems from the best companies and put those in place. That's where you're going to learn how to grow your organization. So we take the interview skills from a book called Top Grading. Brad and Jeff Smart's second book is called Who. Here's the basics of how top grading works. Let's say you're hiring somebody over the next 6 months. Let's say it's a director of marketing. Well, the job description is what we all typically use, but a scorecard is more measurable. What are the 5 or 6 things the person has to get done in their job over the next 6 months or the next 12 months? Make a list of the 5 or 6 things they have to get done over the next 12 months, and then interview people to see if they've done them, not to see if they know how to do them. Here's the difference between a job description and a scorecard. This is a job description for a swimmer, a fast swimmer, strong, experienced with all strokes, competitive team player. That's a job description. But a scorecard for a great swimmer would look very different. You want someone who can win Olympic gold across 3 or 4 strokes, someone who can break world records, someone who can win in individual and team results. So you can see how they're different. When you're interviewing, you want to find out not if someone knows how to do it, you want to find out if they've done it. Too often we hire people that have read the books, or they've got an MBA, or they've learned online, but they've never actually done what we need them to do. A players have actually done it before. And I challenge you to try to raise the bar and get the A players, because if you just get people who know how to do it, you'll get fast swimmers. He's competitive, he's a team player, he knows how to do breaststroke and butterfly, but it's a real difference when you hire someone who's done it before. And that's where the real growth comes in organizations, is when you hire people and you need to poach them because they're already working somewhere. They're not looking for jobs on Monster and Craigslist. Those are typically the B and C players. So you need to raise your bar like a sports team would. So what would Jack do? Look at a guy like Jack Welch, arguably one of the top CEOs on the planet. He had a very simple matrix, and every 6 months he would draw this diagram on a piece of paper. And then he would put the names of all his direct reports in one of these 4 boxes, and he'd put the names of anyone who reported to one of his direct reports in one of these 4 boxes. So what would Jack do if somebody ended up in the bottom left-hand corner with low results, low values? What would he do with them? Yeah, he'd fire them, easy, right? Top right-hand corner, like in the very top extreme right, super high values, super high results. Challenge them, maybe. Promote them, maybe. You handcuff them to your company, dirty girl. You handcuff them to your company for at least 5 years, but you have to find out what it is that really, truly satisfies them. So think about people for a second. If I put a golden handcuff program in place, a program doesn't satisfy the individual. I need to know what individuals need and how I can satisfy them. So let's say this first 2 rows are my God forbid they ever quit people. If I had the same program for all of them, it wouldn't actually work. Some want more results on the work environment. Some want more flex time. Some want vacation pay. Some want equity. Some want phantom stocks. Some want more visibility with the board. Some want more visibility with the press. Some want you to spin off at a company and let them run it. Some want to do acquisitions. Some want to work on their executive MBA while they're doing it. Some want, right? Like there's different things to do. So think about the individual and find out what is it that intrinsically is going to satisfy that person, and how can your company fill that satisfaction and handcuff them for that period of time. Now, what about if somebody's in the bottom right-hand corner with really high values and low results? What do you do with them? Train them, coach them. We all say that. It's the wrong answer. Don't go to training and coaching someone if they're in the wrong seat. Jim Collins gave us the clue. Get the right people on the bus, get the wrong people off the bus, and get everybody in the right seat. So before we coach and train a low performer, let's make sure they're in the right seat. I had a guy, Christopher Bennett, who worked for us at 1-800-GOT-JUNK, and Christopher was brilliant. He was like an unbelievable leader, but he was really struggling in his role as a coach. He was coaching franchisees on their growth, but he really struggled because he couldn't read. Christopher's natural writing style was the mirror image of letters. He was so massively dyslexic that when he wrote everything, it was a flipped image. He actually had written speeches for 2 prime ministers in Canada, but he couldn't read. He learned by listening and he learned by watching. He was truly brilliant. He's a true Renaissance man, but he couldn't actually read properly because everything was flipped around. So he couldn't read our 300-page operations manual to train people on it. So if we coached him, he just would have been average at something he was frustrated in. So we moved him into another role. We put him into PR, where he could talk to people. We'd actually never wrote anything in PR. We picked up the phone and called journalists, and he landed 600 stories about our company in 3 years. We landed 5,200 about our company in 6 years. It was because we put him into the right seat that he excelled. And then you can coach someone when they're in the right seat. Now, what if you do if somebody's on the top left-hand corner with high results but low values? It's like the engineer that no one can get along with, or the sales guy that nobody likes. You have to fire them. No, you don't isolate them. You have to fire them. These are the cultural cancers, remember? In our dad's era or mom's era, they would isolate them. They would give them a private office. Well, great. Now we even hate them even more, right? Or we won't make them come on the retreat with us. Well, great. So I get to come on the retreat? Wow, what lucky me. No, you actually get those cultural cancers out of your organizations. There's no such thing as a really amazing person if you can't get along with them. There's other amazing people out there that will fit. So I actually was doing some coaching with the Vancouver Canucks hockey team, coaching them on culture, and they were working with us on bringing a sports culture into 1-800-GOT-JUNK, and we understood that they wanted level 5 leadership, which is what they talked about in Good to Great. They wanted the humility of each athlete, but they wanted that drive to succeed. And they literally, one by one, worked to get the wrong cultural people off their team. So think of your company in the same way. The cost of keeping the wrong person is 15 times their annual salary. There's data behind this. You have to get the wrong people out of your company. So I got a phone call 12 years ago from a mentor of mine. He asked me to go for breakfast one morning. It was 7 a.m. We're at Denny's on Broadway in Vancouver. And he asked me, is there anybody in your company you know you have to fire? And I said, yeah, I've got this one guy. And he said, what's his name? I said, Tyler. He said, how long have you known you should fire him? I'm like, I don't know, 6 months? He said, why haven't you fired him yet? I started giving him all the reasons I hadn't fired him, and Rob listened, and he said, so basically, you're chicken? And I went, yeah, pretty much. And he said, when are you going to fire Tyler by? I said, I'll do it by Friday. Rob shook his head. He said, don't tell me when you'll do it by, tell me when you'll do it, and Friday's not soon enough. I said, okay, I'll do it tomorrow. He shook his head. I said, fine, I'll do it today. He said, what time today will you fire Tyler? And I said, I'll do it at 12 o'clock. He said, good, call me at 12:15 and I'll be there for you. He said, I know this is going to be really hard, but you have to do it today and you have to do it at 12 o'clock. But you also have to make sure that you mentor Tyler until he's back on his feet, because you failed him as a leader. Over the last 6 months that you've known to fire him, you crushed the will of a human being. He came to work every day and you picked on him, you excluded him, you kept telling him all the things he was screwing up on, you removed him from meetings he used to be involved in. The only reason Tyler didn't quit is because he actually liked you people and he wanted to support you, but every day you broke the will of a human being because you didn't have the courage to act as a leader. So go back to your office, fire Tyler, and mentor him until he's back on his feet, because he deserves that. So I went back to the office, I put my bag down, it's 8 o'clock. I turned to Tyler and I said, Ty, can I grab you for a sec? And we walked down the hallway and we closed the door to one of the meeting rooms, and I turned, we're both 6'4", and we both started to cry. And Tyler spoke before I could say anything. And his first words were, what took you so long? I told my mom 3 months ago you were going to fire me. It's the right decision, but why did this take so long? We worked through it. He did leave. He ended up starting his own PR company. We mentored him on that. He ended up doing PR for Chipotle 8 years ago. Built a really, really cool brand. I would get emails and texts from Tyler, love you, hope you're well, thinking about you. Got a phone call about 3 years ago that he'd gone on a hike from Squamish to Coquitlam, which was about a 5-day hike. And he went without a compass and without a map, and he was going to try to do something that hadn't been done in 90 years, and we've never found the body. It was the largest search in BC history at 7,700 hours. We had low-flying helicopters and planes and dogs. We found ski pole marks and footprints, and we never found Tyler. I can live with myself because I know I did set him free, and I did let him go off and do something. I wish I'd done it earlier. But I'm going to ask you all a question. We come to these conferences to network and meet people and to learn and to raise our game as a leader. So I'm going to ask you a question. If you know that you have at least one or more employees in your company who should be fired because of results or because of values, if you know you have one or more people in your company that should be fired because of results or values, I'd like you to stand up. Stay standing, just look around the room. If you know you have one or more people in your company that should be fired because of results or values, take a look around the room. So here's my ask of you. When you get back to your offices on Monday at noon, I'd like you to set them free. If you don't do it Monday at noon, every day you get ready for work going forward, when you're looking in the mirror in the morning, I want you to look in the mirror and look at the leader who you're looking at and ask yourself what it takes to actually set these people free. So now you can sit. I can just see the media, right? Don't let the Canadian back in, unemployment's up 4%. So the purpose of this, though, is to do the right thing and to set them free. I want to give you some areas around culture. I want to be able to take some questions around it. So rather than me going into more of the content, I've tried to cover 2 of the chapters of my book, double for you. I'm willing to take any questions on the content that we covered or anything else that you want to know until we're done in about 8 or 9 minutes. So any questions from the group? You can either come to the microphone or say it and I'll repeat it. Go ahead.
I just wanted you to elaborate on the coaching after you've terminated someone.
Sure.
Because it sounds like something that could be a really valuable experience for everyone.
Sure.
What are the risks of doing that?
I don't think there's any risk. Thank you. Great question. I don't think there's any risk to being human and caring about individuals. So if we do it in the right way and we just say to them, look, it's not working, they always know. And then we just say, where do you want to go in your career and how can I help you? Is it outplacement? Is it helping you with your resume? Do you want help with your interview skills? Do you just want to go for lunch or go for beer? Or who are their friends in the company that you can make sure you plug in and they spend time with? It's all of those kinds of things, right? But it's really, truly caring about them. I've had people who've had to fire spouses who have worked for them or family members. So you actually have to do it then because you're all connected. So just treat them the same kind of way, right? How would you do it if it was your sister or your brother that you were firing? How would you continue to help them out? Next question, yes? What are some of the programs I put in place to retain high performers? The number one thing you put in place to retain high performers is a culture, a core culture, which starts with alignment so they all know where they're going. It's getting rid of the assholes so that they like who they work with. It's giving them the skills to do the role. I was talking to, I had 11 CEOs join me for dinner last night at Bastille Kitchen. Go there, by the way, wicked awesome food. So I had these 11 CEOs come in, and one of them flew down from Toronto just for the dinner, and we were talking about a viral skill development program that I teach companies to put in place that helps everyone learn more skills and then spread the skills throughout your organization like a virus. That's what Gen Y is looking for more than anything is skill development. So, alignment, getting rid of the assholes, good skill development, open communication. God gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth. We should use them in that ratio. We should listen twice as much as we talk. I flip the org chart upside down. I have the CEO at the bottom supporting the VPs, supporting the team, supporting the customers, and we build the organization inside the core values and your core purpose. It's those kinds of things. It's not money. It's not the we room. All that stuff comes later. Don't mistake, when you read about the best companies to work for, it's not the free lunch and the fact they can do laundry on site. You have to, that comes way later. That's like the wolf stove with the red knobs. You need the strong foundation of the house before you worry about what the stove looks like. Yeah.
In a company that has no hierarchy or minimal hierarchy, how would you get rid of that cultural cancer?
If there's no hierarchy, I would pull together whoever the teams are that make consensus and either force the person out because they're not, they're so visible that they're not getting their job done or there's no results happening. So I would try to force them out that way. I would talk to other key stakeholders and just say they're a cultural cancer, and you can push them out. I mean, hierarchy is one thing, but then people do make decisions, right? So you just have to figure out a way to get them out. Here's the problem with companies that don't have a hierarchy. If you're not able to get rid of a cultural cancer, it's a sign your company's in trouble. Right? This is not a kumbaya group hug. Right? At the end of the day, it's a results-only work environment as well. They need to actually get results. There should be a bit of a meritocracy. And then when you start building a culture so strong of people that get it and are working together and driving as a team and all live the core values, those cultural cancers are almost like the smoker who shows up at a yoga event. Like, they just get ostracized. Right? I went to my first yoga retreat and found out later it was like a nudist retreat. And after about 5 minutes, I'm like, fuck it. You just take your clothes off and walk around. Like, you have to. I'm like, I'm not going to be the guy wearing shorts for 3 days. It wasn't me. Yes.
Okay, on that note.
Right? I go to Burning Man too.
How about when your company is acquiring other company and you're bringing in 80, 100, 150 people into a culture, and they're very different.
Yeah.
You spend a lot of time trying to bring them along, but any words of wisdom there?
Sure, great question. I helped a client, John Ratliff, years ago do 21 acquisitions over 3 years. And what we strategized on was for the first 6 months, it had nothing to do with trying to blend the organizations together. It was just make the acquisition, get rid of the dead weight, get rid of all the inefficiencies and let them be for a few months until the dust settles. And then it's with the alignment, and then it's people. So if you think about building your business like building a jigsaw puzzle, the corners of your jigsaw puzzle, your core purpose, your BHAG, your vivid vision, and your core values, get those 4 deep into all the companies you acquire first. Then get the people systems. So you're interviewing, recruiting, hiring, and then you get your strategic thinking, your meetings. So don't worry about the way we do stuff as much as get the core of why we do stuff together. Get that going in first. Simon Sinek and I have known each other for 14 years before anybody on the planet knew either of us, and his start with why is absolutely true. You got to get that stuff first and then worry about how we do things later. We'll go here for this one. Yeah.
What do you do if your CEO's the asshole?
Great. If your CEO's the asshole, awesome. Great question. So I've actually worked with a lot of CEOs that were the assholes. You either try to get them out or move them into a non-performing role, or you just change organizations. Like, if you can't change the organization, there's all kinds of organizations that would love to have you. By the way, if there's anybody who's working here who hates their job but they're brilliant people, let me know. I'll help find good people to hire you. I'm like, I love hiring good people. I poach people for sport on Saturdays. Yes.
Early stage startup, a year and a half into it. We were 10 people big. Co-founder had a pretty big falling out. He brought on 4 people. The cancer had kind of spread pretty bad, so I went ahead and fired the other 4, and then he's letting go. So we're restarting in a sense.
Awesome.
I got the right people on the bus, but I don't know where we're driving to.
Great, you need the vision. Talk to me afterwards. I'll walk you through how to do this thing. Like, I love the people that are in your situation. When you get rid of the assholes and you're left with the core group, get your vivid vision done. When you get your vivid vision done, your core values, your core purpose, and get your team rallying around that, they'll figure out how to grow you. And they'll be so inspired, it'll be like a hell yeah workplace. But that's where it starts. Last question, then we got a break.
I was recruited to a new company. I start at the end of the month, but I've been with them 3 or 4 months consulting as I wind down my own business. We've identified a cancer in that group. I had expressed that to the owners. They said, whatever you want to do. And initially I thought, come in, listen first, be that guy that doesn't just blow up the place. But after hearing you, I think I should get on the phone before I leave and, get this thing taken care of before I even start.
Yeah, I want to get the wrong cultural cancers out of the organizations, but you need to make sure that you do it in the right timing period. There is that first 90 days that you need to kind of integrate yourself into an organization, and there is some truth behind that. But also when you have doubt, you have no doubt. So when your gut's saying to get rid of people, get rid of people. You'll get the rallying point. So remember what we started with is that Google and Microsoft and culture is a choice. Culture is a choice for all of us, and we can decide which way we're going to go. So I have all of my videos from all my speaking events are on my website at CameronHerold.com. If you want them for your organizations to teach your employees, you're welcome to go there and you can download them or watch them online. Enjoy Inbound 2015.